Hi, everyone. I'm Paulo. I'm an economist, and my field of specialization is a sub branch of game theory called implementation theory. It's very related to decentralization, which is how I got into crypto. Ended up meeting Ron Singh and Han and the Whitepaper Reading Club. I did my PhD in Singapore at SMU, and was studying implementation theory and social choice theory, which is also another sub branch of game theory.
My name is Rong Singh, and I run the White Paper Reading Club. I mostly work on developer tooling. And prior to this, I went into research within the blockchain space.
Hi everyone, my name is Han. I'm a DGen, so to speak.
And happy to be your podcast host for today. So, Paulo, tell me a little bit more what got you interested in game theory and specifically these two sub branches of it.
Game theory started many years ago. I am a gamer, and when I was a teenager, I got into game theory partly because of the game idea. Like, I was very much into Magic the Gathering and other kinds of a little bit competitive games. And game theory does have some interference. It's just that game theory it's a lot more than this. The way that we use game in game theory is essentially to describe many kind of situations as long as you have it very formalized. So games that you play can be games in game theory. You could have game theory for chess, for magic, but for so many other things, if you really put the level of formalism in detail, dating could be a game, crypto could be a game, job market is certainly is modeled with game theory and many other things. So this is why I stayed in game theory. I got it for wrong reasons, but I stayed because to me it's the most interesting way to be modeling strategic human behavior. There are a few ways that you can model this. Game theory, it takes only the parts that I like. So you leave it for the psychologists, for the specialists to be determining what are the payoffs, the structure of the game itself. What can every actor do? Once you have all of this very formalized, okay, this is what each player can do. This is what would happen if they take every action. This is how they would perceive these outcomes. Then you go to game theory to really answer the question, given this situation, what they will do. And in game theory, it uses a lot of logic to try to answer this question. So all of the other aspects of trying to predict human behavior that are less formal, less logic, it's left aside. And what you will have, it's something that requires a lot more analysis, mathematics, which is another reason why I got so much into game theory. I really like mathematics and logical thinking.
So it's something like the 4D chess, if you will.
Little bit, yes.
I just have a question because when I first heard about game theory, it was through the movie The Beautiful Mind.
Yes.
With talking about, was it John Nash? Then I took a course somewhat on this. And I remember there were these like the optimal strategy. There isn't that much like psychology and stuff in it. It's almost like in computer science, there's like state machines. How should you think about it if there's like a one-liner for the noobs?
Psychology would come into the part of determining the payoffs. It would tell what players care about, how they perceive the situation of the game. All of this will be psychology. And this is one of the big trappings or the pitfalls of game theory, in that what you are modeling, it's not exactly how the players perceive that game. So you need to really be like making sure that the numbers that you're putting there, which one is biggest, which one is the smallest, is the same way that the people perceive the game. Okay, this is my favorite option. Because sometimes, for instance, it's not about the money. It's also about reputation. It's about compassion and whatnot. And all of these needs to be incorporated, reflected in the payoffs. So when you're deciding which one will be the numbers, when you're putting like that funny matrix of game theory, that's when psychology comes in. Then game theory, it's about how people react to these incentives. And there are several layers, several levels that you can get. You could get, for instance, someone who can recognize what is the best strategy. Suppose that there is a clear best strategy. Then that would be like a very basic level of rationality, something that could be played, I don't know, by ants or monkeys. they would eventually understand, okay, yeah, this is the clear best strategy. Regardless of what the other opponent would do, this is the best thing to do. Then you could have something that is more formal, someone that can think and think that the others are thinking as well. So it'll be okay. Since the other person will never act like this, then this one is the best strategy. And then you can be iterating this. Okay, not quite 2 times. You can think of several times, infinite times. You could also have something that is more refined, Nash equilibria, which you make predictions, and these predictions tend to be true. I'm essentially trying to find situations in which my best response is best response to everyone else's best response. So there is no regret in some sense. I don't have any incentive to unilaterally deviate from this strategy. So there are many levels in how smart people are, what kind of intelligence or rationality people have and can use. These are the things that vary a little bit in game theory. It's what feeds a concept that we're going to talk a little bit more later of solution concept. It's one of the building blocks of game theory. It essentially says how smart you think people are, how they make decisions in some sense. And through this, you try to make the predictions. But game theory, it's mostly focused on this, on answering how would smart people or some people with some kind of rationality behave in a game. Psychology is about modeling how they perceive the game, what are the numbers, and all of this other kind of know-how. Game theory enters only after you have really formalized what every player can do, how they perceive the game, what are the outcomes. Then you try to predict what will be their behaviors.
Sounds like you're mapping out all the possible options someone has.
Yes.
And then from there, you strip away all the emotions, all the irrationality. So incorporating all that, and then from there, assign like probability of like where this person will do.
Yeah, it's one of the concepts is probabilistic. So you could try to look into probabilities, particularly because some games, they don't really have clear best response. Suppose for the most famous one, rock, paper, scissors. The only kind of equilibrium, the rock, paper, scissors, is everyone randomizing between rock, paper, and scissors. Because if I know that you are more likely to play either one of the 3, say more likely to be playing rock, I suddenly have a better strategy. I should be playing paper. And if you know that I will be playing paper, then you'll not really be playing rock anymore. You should be playing scissors and so on. So the only way that we can have kind of an equilibrium, a situation in which neither of us wants to be deviating, there have to be some kind of stability, is if both of us are randomizing between rock, paper, and scissors with equal probability.
I guess the most basic game is like the prisoner's dilemma. So you have the 4 cubes, and in that situation, because it's always optimal to deviate and to rat out the other person, because then there's like the points, right?
Yeah. Let me show here the prisoner's dilemma very quick. For game theory, we have a situation where we have, say, 2, 2. 3, 0, 0, 3, 1, and 1. And these are the strategies. Essentially, the labels that people go to give the strategy vary, but I'm going to call them cooperate and defect. So what made games Prisoner's Dilemma so famous? What made Prisoner's Dilemma very famous is that the prediction generated by game theory is that both players will play defect. So this would be the equilibrium of the game, 1-1, despite the fact that both of them would benefit from playing cooperate, 2-2. Pareto dominates in economic terms, like both of them can be better off without anyone being worse off if they play CC. But why don't they play CC in this case? Why didn't both of them don't play C?
What does 1, 2, and 3, and 0 mean?
The idea is that players want to have the highest numbers.
Right.
What they represent depends a little bit on what the story that you're telling. The classic story of Prisoner's Dilemma is that that gives the name Prisoner's Dilemma, is that they are criminals that were arrested, but the police doesn't have enough evidence to be charging them. So the police put them in separate rooms and says, okay, you can confess your crime or you can stay quiet. If you confess your crime and your partner stays quiet, we'll let you go away for free. So take 0 years in jail. And your partner is going to be charged with 3 years in prison because he denied the crime. So 2 years for the crime and 1 extra year because you didn't really lied. If both of them confess the crime, they will be both sentenced. So these numbers should be all negative, by the way. So it should be -1, and then the equilibrium is -2, just because I'm here having like positive numbers. So higher is better. It should be negative numbers for them. So that 0 is the best outcome rather than 3 being the best outcome. But yeah, so if both of them confess, both of them are charged. And if neither of them confesses, then the police only holds them a little longer for interrogation, but eventually has to release them because they don't have strong evidence. So both of them get to walk away for free. And the idea is that would be better for both of them to stay quiet rather than confessing, but they both end up confessing. But as I said, this is one of the stories that's possible to be explaining. Another possible story for the same game, same numbers, that I find more interesting and more relevant to economics is that this prisoner's dilemma can also represent trading between strangers that don't really communicate well. And the idea is that each one of them has a different kind of good that they can either consume. Think, for instance, that they have, I don't know, cookies of different flavors. And they can either consume their own good, so eating their own cookie for the flavor that's sick of, or they can be trading with one another. And if they trade, they get to eat a new kind of cookie that they like. So they gain two payoff of 2 for the variety. And the 3-0 represents I give you a cookie and you eat both of them. So I get payoff of 2 for eating the new cookie and 1 for eating the old cookie. So I get 3 payoff and 0 the other person because he didn't get to eat any cookies. And so this is another way of framing the prisoner's dilemma. And this way is more interesting and it shows why the prisoner's dilemma is very special in economics, because the prediction that you have in game theory is the payoff of 1-1, which will be having no trade. And this is, okay, why is this a prediction? You can see here that choosing D is always better than choosing C, regardless of what the other player does. So look here, if my opponent plays C, and I play C, I get a payoff of 2. But if I play D, I get a payoff of 3. Think, for instance, that eating my own cookie is always better than not eating my own cookie. If I am a selfish person, I'm always better off by eating my cookie than giving someone else a cookie.
So let me just understand quickly about the cookies part. I just want to understand then what you're saying is this. D is to trade.
No, D is to give the other person your cookie. If both of you give the other person your cookie, then you trade effectively.
So if I give somebody my cookie, then I get 2 points.
No, if I give someone my cookie, I don't really get anything. I gain 2 points if someone gives me their cookie. So if the other guy gives me his cookie, I gain 2 points because I'm eating a flavor of cookie that I never ate. If both of you offer each other your cookies, you are better off than if both of you eat your own cookie.
So in this case, if I was to offer my cookie, but the
Yes.
other person doesn't offer it, means that it goes into one of the EO brackets.
Exactly. Yes. 3 because they ate their own cookie, which gives 1, plus the other 2 from the new cookie.
So you get more by trying somebody else's cookie.
Yes. It's like a new flavor of cookie, or kind of sick of eating your same cookies, just more because you are eating something different. This represents the benefit of trade.
So here, the worldview is that it's better to do trade than to
Yes.
not trade. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
But-
then because you don't know if the other party is gonna betray you,
Exactly.
therefore you might fuck yourself and you end up in a lose kind of situation.
Maybe it's actually more extreme than that. I think what this is saying, it's always better to not trade and to just let the other person trade. it's not like probability. It seems like for sure they will not trade.
For sure. Because
Mm.
regardless of what the other person does, it's always better to eat your own cookie. I would rather eat a cookie than to not eat a cookie. So it doesn't matter if the other guy is giving me a cookie or not. Regardless of whether or not he's offering a cookie, I'm better off by eating my cookie. I'm always getting a payoff of 1 if I eat my cookie. It's always 1 higher. So here, if the guy offers me his cookie, I can either get a 2 if I give him my cookie as well, or I can get 3. I eat his cookie and mine. If the
Right.
guy eats his own cookie, I'm also better by eating my own cookie, getting 1 than 0. So it never changes the payoff. I'm offering the cookie is always subtracting a payoff of 1 from me because I'm always losing out on eating my own cookie.
Is that more of a worldview kind of conflict? Because if I would want to argue that if we are both offering, then it's a net positive kind of worldview, like a win-win kind of worldview, whereas 0-3 is like self-preservation worldview. And then 1 is a pessimistic worldview where, and these are different worldviews that kind of fit into this graph. Is it more of a matter of a worldview, or is it more of a matter of an optimal way to do it?
This is factual. Obviously, if you can modify a little bit the numbers, if you are factoring other things like, I don't know, if you're playing against the Dilenma, then obviously he gets a higher payoff just from being selfish and whatnot. But if you're talking about something very down to earth, think about survival, and this is calories, and you're always better by getting more calories. You're talking on like these ants playing the game, and they're always better by eating more than to eat less, or pigs or whatnot. Then this kind of shows how it is hard to achieve cooperation and trade in societies. So I don't think it gets too much into worldview of, okay, one of them trading and the other, one of them offering the cookie, another one eating and having a 3-0 reflects a particular worldview. It's not really about that. If you are talking about taking these numbers as they are, the worldview would be on what the numbers should be. So if you accept these numbers, then there's nothing really about worldview. The worldview was already reflected in the way that we put those numbers on the paper. Now it's really about what is the rational choice. And you don't need to have a lot of sophisticated reasoning to realize that E is always better and that EE will be the outcome. Even if you have very simplistic agents, as long as they can respond to incentives, they should come to the conclusion that they should choose E rather than O in this scenario.
In this case, because it is a mathematical model where you only have two players or 2 users, how about, and it's quite an interesting segue into the next topic, which is war trade, where you have Trumps doing the tariffs and whatnot. In this case, where there's multiple players, how would this kind of evolve to fit that?
You could expand this. So the thing with game theory and more players is that it becomes a little bit of a pain to be represented on paper because you need to have several matrices rather than just one matrix. So it's a bit more painful, but the logic stands. I could have 3 or 4 players, each one of them with a different flavor of cookie, and each one of them would still be better off by eating as many cookies as they could. So they will never be offering a cookie if there is no guarantee that offering a cookie does anything positive for them. You are always at a loss if you just give your cookie away, if your objective is to eat as many cookies as you possibly can.
So this is more of there is that bit where you need to have some self-clearance.
So the idea of how can we achieve OO in this game, the cooperative equilibrium, there are several possible ways. The one that is most famous in game theory is through reputation and repetition. So what this game fails to capture is that this is a one shot. You just met a stranger on the road. You're never going to see him again. So really offering your cookie is an act of charity. And the other guy like, why do I gain from being charitable? There is nothing really to gain. But if you are interacting with one another repeatedly, then you can be building reputation. And more importantly, the universe of the game expands. So you can have things like strategies that are like tit for tat or ring trigger in game theory. The idea is that, okay, if you help me, I'll help you. But if you betray me, I'm going to betray you tomorrow. If you don't offer me a cookie, I'm never going to offer you a cookie again. And with this, the idea of repetition is that the gains of trade and the losses, they can accumulate over time. So it would represent like eating my own cookie and betraying the other guy would be a short-term gain in exchange for long-term losses, because then the other guy will never be giving me again his cookie. That's, for instance, one of the elements that that is not really captured Prisoner's Dilemma there with just one shot. So it's the idea of long-term interaction, credibility, trust, reputation, all of these things feed into, and it's how societies work as well. If someone goes, bro, just please give me $1,000, I'm going to be an investment, and tomorrow I give you need to have some kind of credit. You need to have some better reputation. You're just not going to be just giving him the money for free. You need to have more kind of trust. And there's all other things as well that feature into this. For instance, patience and how much you value the future. Societies that tend to be more immediatistic, tend to prioritize short term, they will be betrayed and they will not be going to reap the benefits from long-term cooperation. It's what you experience in some societies, just to shit a bit on my own country and not to shit on other countries, like in Brazil, where you could have nice things, but because people decide to just have like short-term mentality, they kind of get trapped in bad positions. For instance, bike sharing. You could steal the bike today and got a free bike. Or you could have society that cooperates and you always have a bike available where you go if you have bike sharing.
This is so interesting. I think Han just put the pressure of the world on you with the one question. This maybe goes into what you're talking about 3-3 and this whole cooperation thing too, right? It's that idea of this long-term thinking, long-term collaboration. And that's where reputation comes in. Because if we're just meeting once, it doesn't matter. I don't care what you think about me. You don't care what I think about you. But as you want to do things over the long term, like in the Prisoner's Dilemma, if I'm like, you know what? If I'm just going to do this thing with this one guy once in my lifetime, sure, I'm going to rat him out. But if I know I'm going to come out one day and then we're going to do business again and they know my family, then you're actually more motivated to work together. So maybe there's something to be said about the trade war that's happening now. It made it so clear in my mind that everything that's happening now is actually a very short-term thing. But I don't know, maybe there's other dimensions that maybe we're not considering as well. But just on this idea of a reputation, can that also be modeled into the game such that if you screw me over, then you have this like third dimension. It's like the third axis.
So yes, the idea would be, so just to put a disclaimer, the trade thing is a lot more complex, not to just definitely a very specific dimension of how to do this kind of repetition of Prisoner's Dilemma.
Yes.
So the idea would be, suppose that I am playing this game over many periods and I'm accumulating, and it will function a little bit like stocks, that you have a discount factor of whatever. So suppose that every day we're going to be playing this kind of Prisoner's Dilemma game, and I get to get, I don't know, $2 if we trade, $3 if I cheat, and $1 if both of us don't cooperate. And you have over time this interaction. So I value the present more than I value the future. So $2 today is worth $2. $2 tomorrow, it's worth less than $2, say 1.8, depends on your discount factor. I'm sure that everyone that is familiar with finances knows how to do this, how to compute discounted payoffs. And the game then becomes a lot more complex because you have many periods. When you're choosing a strategy, you're not choosing just if you're going to be offering or eating. You have to be deciding what I'm going to do today, what I'm going to do tomorrow, given what I observed today, what I'm going to do next week, given what I observed every other day in the past, and so on. So it becomes a lot more complex. You have a lot more actions available. Rather than being just 2 actions, you become, say, like just with one more day, you get, rather than 2 actions, you get 4 actions. Is what am I going to do tomorrow, given what if you cooperated with me, and what I'm going to do tomorrow if you didn't cooperate with me. So there will be 4 actions for tomorrow. And every other day, it's going to be expanding. Because I can condition on what I say. every other day before.
So what you're saying is this: in that game, you will have this is day one, and then you have another one which is day two, and then there will be some way to link the decisions from this day to the other day, and as a result, you're looking at, well, over a period of, let's say, 30 days, what are my total points,
Yeah.
and did I receive the most? I see. And then in this situation, then I'm be like, if you screwed me over, then I'm just gonna screw you over for sure.
Yes.
But now, if I know that you're cooperating with me because there's another day, then I will cooperate.
So for instance, imagine that I'm playing against someone who is very resentful. It's if you don't offer me a cookie every single day, if you, for one day you don't offer me a cookie, I'm never offering you again, ever. And obviously you are trading a benefit of one today versus a bond that pays one every other day, essentially. So I'm essentially trading one versus one divided by one minus the discount rate, essentially. Again, people in finance should be checking this and seeing that it makes sense. So if I am someone who is very patient, so someone who has this very high, my discount rate is very low, you're going to see that 1 divided by 1 minus r is going to be very big. It's going to be like close to infinity if I'm very patient. Whereas if I'm very impatient, say that my is 0, then YOLO, the two of them are equivalent. I would rather have the cookie today.
I'm just nodding because I don't understand the math. No, but I think
Yeah.
in relation to this, there's something that's quite interesting to be discussed as well. Trust beget trust, and of course, resentment begets resentment as well. So there is some form of compounding effect going on. Yeah. So I think that's what you're trying to describe with this formula. Is that right?
Yes. The formula here represents the value of short-term gain versus long-term gain.
Right.
And the long-term gain, it's more valuable the more patient you are, because cookie tomorrow is almost as good as a cookie today. So having a supply of cookies for 1 year or until the end of the game, it's definitely more valuable than getting one cookie now, because I'm patient.